So, I love Crash Bandicoot. Who doesn't? But I'm not the first one to say that I've cried my fair share of tears at Crash Bandicoot games. And this really made me wonder, is Crash Bandicoot too hard? Let's discuss right now.
I got hot sauce in my bag, swag.
Hello there, beautiful human. My name is RidersDX and welcome to my channel, where today we're going to be talking a bit more broadly about Crash Bandicoot overall as a franchise, but this is more specifically referring to the original 3 games in the Insane Trilogy, because I think if there are any games in the Crash Bandicoot franchise that really make me question this, it's definitely those first 3 games. And before you go ahead and click that dislike button, if you're just like a really huge fan of those Insane Trilogy games, hear me out on what I'm about to discuss, because I can guarantee you I'm going to take this discussion in a direction that you're not going to be expecting. So just hold your horses and go ahead and dislike afterwards, but make sure you just listen to what I say first. Now before we get started, I just want to share today's fan art, like always. So this fan art comes from someone named Darcy Mew. They posted this in my Discord server, and check out Meadow Duckles here. So this is a nice recreation of my original avatar, but I'm loving the 2D art style with this one. It feels very nostalgic for me because this is how I would use to like color in things. Like I wouldn't be able to draw nearly as good, but this is what I would try to aim for when I was a kid. So yeah, thank you so much for this. I'm not sure if Darcy has any links right now at the time that I'm recording this. If they do, now be sure to leave them in the description box below, and also leave a link in the top right corner if it's a YouTube channel. But other than that, thank you so much, Darcy. I really do appreciate this. Back to the topic at hand. So if there's one thing that I think we can all agree on, it's the fact that Crash Bandicoot games are hard. Like they can be really difficult, and especially the original Insane Trilogy games. Like I've read this one interview one time where Naughty Dog was designing levels for like the original 3 games, and there were some levels that they had to cut because they ended up being way too difficult. And so here's the thing though, I feel like a lot of games that came out in the 90s in particular were pretty difficult, at least when I first started playing them, compared to games that I was playing as like an elementary school / middle school student who was playing like games like Sonic Heroes, Super Mario Sunshine, a lot of those like 3D platformer games that were just really starting to find their own niche and really get really prominent in terms of like popularity. But then I would try to play some of those old classic games, like with the Sonic series, for example. I'd try to play like Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and I gave up on those games like so quickly as a kid because I just could not get past like a certain level. Like it was so difficult for me. And as a kid I gave up very easily. Not like now as an adult, that like as an adult I can be very persistent now in what I try to do, but as a kid, oh gosh, I gave up on things so fast, faster than Sonic the Hedgehog. So as a kid, like really difficult games were not really my thing, and I'm sure if I played like the original Crash games when I was a kid, I probably wouldn't have gotten very far with them either. In fact, playing them now as an adult, I'm finding it very difficult to get through them. Like it's just the difficulty spikes in Crash Bandicoot games are just on a whole nother level in my opinion compared to like most other franchises. And for some people that's part of the appeal. Like some people really like that hardcore game design and really like being challenged, but there's also a lot of other people who don't like being challenged like that would rather have a more easygoing video gaming experience, and that's perfectly fine also. Everyone has their own separate taste in terms of like how video games should be and how they should play and what kind of experiences we should get out of them. Like I'm not gonna lie, I'm more so the kind of person that like isn't as into the challenge and is more into getting immersed into the world of the video game, getting to know the characters and having fun with the gameplay without wanting to rip my hair out. And for me, that's initially what I thought about the Crash Insane Trilogy. So when I first got the Crash Insane Trilogy along with the Nintendo Switch and I started playing those games for the first time, I wasn't playing it that often. And the reason that I wasn't playing it that often is because every time I would put in the game, I just felt completely stupid and ridiculous because I was dying like 10 times in each level, and I felt like every misstep that I took was punished to the greatest degree. It was just such a discouraging experience that it was hard to kind of get past like a lot of the hurdles in the Crash Insane Trilogy. But then I kept playing it, I just kept coming back to it. There was something about the Crash Insane Trilogy that I kept coming back to, and so as I kept coming back to it, I started getting better at the game. I started, mastering the controls more, being able to predict what was coming at me. I mean, the game was still difficult and I'm still trying to get through it, but I was doing a lot better than I used to. And getting through some of these tough levels, I all of a sudden start feeling this really great feeling of like accomplishment, proudness, just feeling like I accomplished something that was like really difficult. And it's such a good feeling when you know something's been difficult but you're able to get past it. Like that feeling that I got like going through Crash Insane Trilogy was so awesome, and it really sold me on like just how amazing these titles are. Like they're honestly great games, and the difficulty could be really high at a lot of times, but when you get past them, it's one of the most rewarding feelings I've ever felt. And yeah, it kind of just made me realize that like games really do need a certain challenge, and they need to challenge you fairly, because there's a difference between being challenging because you have good game level design and being challenging because you're cheap. That's a very delicate balance that video games need to figure out, like all video games, and Crash Bandicoot is no difference. But so that's how my opinion on the Insane Trilogy changed. When I first started playing it, I was like, I don't really get why this is so big and important. I was a really big fan of Crash Twinsanity going into the Insane Trilogy. I'm like, I had more fun playing Crash Twinsanity, to be honest. But as I got more used to the Insane Trilogy and I started plowing through some of those really tough levels, it made me fall in love with the games. And I think that's why Crash Bandicoot games, even though they're really hard, they're so rewarding that the difficulty is very well justified once you get to that point. However, I really do want to talk about how feasible that is in terms of marketing a game like that to the general public in 2019, because as I noted before, a lot of the 90s games that I would play as a kid felt way more difficult than the games that were coming out at the time. And I do feel like games have been very dumbed down since like the older video game generations, and not dumbed down in a way that like they're a lot more simplistic. Games are definitely more complex now than they used to be, but I feel like games in terms of difficulty are being dumbed down in like most franchises. And I think a big reason for that is because game companies want their games to be accessible, and your game can't be accessible if people find it too difficult to get through it. I feel like video game companies as a whole have sort of backed off the difficulty spikes because they want games to, appeal to a wide audience. They want their games to be successful, make lots of money. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, come on, the video game industry is a business. You need money to run a business, so that makes total sense. So I think that's why a lot of the video games that I played as a kid, I felt like were not nearly as hard as the original games that came out in the 90s. I mean, maybe it's just because I grew up in the 2000s, I'm more used to that gameplay style. Maybe people that grew up in the 90s have the same issue with modern games. So if that's the case, then let me know in the comment section below, because I'd be really interested in exploring that a little bit more. But I do feel like video games nowadays are a lot easier than they used to be. And so if, say, Vicarious Visions was creating the next Crash Bandicoot game and it was using the exact same gameplay as the Insane Trilogy, if that game was just as hard or harder than the Insane Trilogy, then it's definitely going to appeal to like old Crash fans. But is it going to bring in new people to the Crash franchise? And I honestly am not sure. I think that it might still be able to because Crash Bandicoot is a really great franchise overall, and if they use the same kind of gameplay as the original trilogy, then there's that nostalgic factor and that really great reputation that the original Insane Trilogy has. But at the same time, I can very well imagine kids picking up the game, and because they're not patient enough or they really can't be bothered to master the game that's so strict in terms of what you can do, they might just give up on the game and go for something like Fortnite or the Mario games, or I don't know, whatever kids are playing right now. That's what they'll go for instead. And so it kind of sucks that game difficulty has gone down in the past like couple decades or so. But I understand the logic behind it. I understand why video game companies do it. It's just that I think that people might not recognize that there's a lot of value in having a game that's difficult, that you need to really work hard to get through. Because if you can get through those really hard video games, then like it shows that you're a very persistent person and that you're patient, and these are all really great life skills actually. So I think that's why like difficult games, if they're difficult in the right way, it can actually be really helpful for people to play those games in terms of applying those kind of aspects into their everyday lives. And so I hope that the next next Crash Bandicoot game does not dumb down the difficulty, although it very well might, and if it does, then that's just a reality that you all need to kind of like get used to. But personally, I hope that they don't dumb down Crash Bandicoot. I think like its difficulty is part of its appeal, but at the same time I do see how it could be very hard for a new fan to kind of get into the franchise if they're dying like at every single second in all their levels. So it's all about finding that delicate balance, trying to ease people into the gameplay and then really kicking up the challenge a notch so that people can still feel rewarded when they get through like a really tough level. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts about it. I know this was a really interesting and different kind of video compared to most of my other videos, which are very heavily news pushed, but I just thought that this was an interesting discussion. I'd be really interested in hearing what you all think. Do you all think that games nowadays are easier than games before, and do you all think that's a good or bad thing? And do you think that Crash Bandicoot should continue being the challenging franchise that he is, or should the game difficulty be brought down a little bit to kind of let people ease into the franchise more and appeal to a wider audience? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to my channel if you like videos like these, want to see more in the future, follow me on Twitter at RidersDX, or join my Discord server, the Spongy Garden. This is Riders, riding out.